They thought I would never find out, that the cameras tucked into picture frames and lamps would keep me quiet, that my silence would be my consent. But the moment I saw my own face playing on my husband's computer, a folder marked with my initials, I knew. They weren't just watching me, they were preparing to erase me. Before I tell you how I turned their plan into their downfall, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It's free. It helps me share more of these stories. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when I decide to stop being their victim and start being their nightmare. My name is Elena. I'm 36, a high school English teacher, and for the longest time I believed I'd built the life I dreamed of. A husband, a son, a tidy little home. The kind of life where you pack lunches in the morning, fold laundry at night, and think the worst you'll ever face is paying bills late or arguing about what movie to watch. But fairy tales don't end with the wedding. Sometimes that's where the nightmare begins. My husband Mark came from a wealthy family in Portland. Old money, the kind that buys lake houses and country club memberships, the kind that wears tradition like armor. His mother, Evelyn, hated me from the start. I wasn't their kind of people. I didn't have the right pedigree, the right name, the right money. She'd make little comments at dinners, always disguised as jokes. Some girls only marry up to get out of their own neighborhoods. Or, I suppose literature degrees don't pay the bills, but luckily you married well. Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. And Mark? He never defended me. He just smiled like his mother was harmless, like I should let it slide. So, I swallowed it. For years. The day everything shifted, it was a Sunday lunch at their sprawling house. The air was heavy with the smell of rosemary chicken and Evelyn's perfumed floral, suffocating. My brother-in-law avoided my eyes, fiddling with his phone. Evelyn smiled too wide, her teeth flashing like a threat. Mark ate like it was the most normal day in the world. Then my phone buzzed under the table. An unknown number. Don't react. They're recording you. My blood turned to ice. I kept my face neutral, kept chewing, but my eyes scanned the room. A picture frame slightly crooked, a new vase on the mantel, a wall socket cover not quite flush. They were filming me. But why? I wasn't dangerous. I was just Elena, a teacher, a wife, a woman who had endured more jabs than applause in this family. What could they possibly need from watching me? That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind spun, replaying every moment at that table, every smirk on Evelyn's lips. My husband snored beside me, deep and peaceful, like a man who either carried no secrets or had carried them so long they weighed nothing. By morning, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started looking. At first, it was subtle. I'd straighten picture frames, press on outlets, lift books on shelves. I didn't find anything obvious, but the dread grew, gnawing at me in the quiet moments. Then, one night, when Mark fell asleep in his office chair, I walked in and saw it. The computer screen glowed in the dark. A folder open, labeled EL_backup. My initials. Inside were dozens of video files. Living room 0714, kitchen 0802, bedroom 0730. I clicked one with shaking hands. And there I was, on the screen, sitting in my own living room, phone pressed to my ear, whispering to my therapist. I feel like I'm being watched. I don't know how much longer I can stay in this house. The irony hit me like a punch. They had it all. My fears, my private tears, my breakdowns, catalogued like exhibits in a trial I hadn't been told I was part of. Rage surged through me, hot and dizzying. But worse than the spying was the editing. I noticed because of my clothes. A green sweater I'd only worn after that conversation appeared in clips spliced before it. They weren't just recording. They were cutting, twisting, creating a version of me that didn't exist. They were building a case. But for what? Custody of my son? A divorce where I'd be labeled unstable? An excuse to lock me away while they kept him? That night, I crept back to bed, my mind electric. Mark slept soundly, oblivious, or maybe not oblivious at all. I stared at the ceiling for hours. Hurt, humiliation, fear, they all roared inside me. But beneath it, something harder began to form. Resolve. They wanted me to look unstable. They wanted me to break. So I decided I would give them the opposite. If they filmed, I'd film too. If they played games, I'd learn the rules. And when the time was right, I'd flip the script so completely they'd choke on their own lies. Because I wasn't going to let them erase me. Not me, not my son, not ever. At first, I tried to convince myself maybe I was imagining things. Maybe that folder on Mark's computer was old, something left over from a forgotten project. Maybe Evelyn's constant hovering was just her brand of suffocating love. Maybe the paranoia was in me, not in them. But denial has a short shelf life. The cracks widened quickly. It started with little things that could have been mistakes. My phone would vanish from my bag at school, only to show up on the kitchen counter at home. My journal, the one place I spilled the things I couldn't say out loud, started showing signs of being touched. Pages slightly bent, the ribbon marker moved, even though I knew exactly where I had left it. I asked Mark once, trying to sound casual, "Hey, have you been in my journal?" He didn't even look up from his laptop. No, why would I read that? But there was the faintest curl of amusement at the corner of his mouth. When I pressed again a few days later, he turned serious, almost condescending. "Elena, you've been so stressed lately. You misplace things. You imagine things. It's not healthy." He reached across the table, resting his hand on mine like he was soothing a child. "Maybe you should talk to someone about your memory. Mom knows a specialist who's really good." That's when my stomach dropped. It wasn't just invasion, it was strategy. They weren't only recording me, they were writing a script where I was the unstable one, and I was supposed to play the starring role. The gaslighting didn't stay subtle for long. It seeped into every corner of my life. One afternoon, I came home from work, still smelling like chalk dust and floor cleaner, and found Lucas sitting stiffly at the dining table. Evelyn's manicured hand rested on his shoulder like a claim. My pulse spiked. "What's going on?" Evelyn's smile was a weapon disguised as kindness. "Oh, nothing, dear. Lucas was just telling me how worried he is about you. Weren't you, sweetheart?" Lucas frowned, looking between us. "Grandma said sometimes mommies get sick in their heads. Is that true, Mom?" The words knocked the air out of me. "No, baby," I said quickly, forcing my voice steady. "Mommy's fine." Evelyn's eyes glittered as she sipped her coffee. "We just want what's best for him, Elena. If you're not coping well, it might be time to—" I said I'm fine. I snapped, louder than I meant to. My voice cracked in the air like a whip. Lucas flinched. Evelyn's smile widened. That night, Lucas wouldn't meet my eyes as I tucked him into bed. His small shoulders hunched as he rolled away from me. I sat on the edge of the mattress, swallowing the lump in my throat. "You know I'm okay, right? Mommy's just tired sometimes. I feel good for you, but maybe I do. Come here." He nodded slowly, but I saw the hesitation, the seed of doubt Evelyn had planted. And it terrified me more than anything, because if she could turn my own son against me, What else could she take? At school, the whispers followed. During a parent-teacher meeting, his counselor leaned in with that pitying tone I'd come to hate. Lucas mentioned you've been sad a lot, that you cry when you think no one is watching. Is everything okay at home? The walls closed in around me. Evelyn was poisoning my son, and now she was poisoning my reputation, planting doubts in every corner of my life. I tried to laugh it off, shaking my head. We've just had a rough patch, nothing serious. But my voice shook, and I could see the doubt settle into the counselor's eyes. Meanwhile, Mark sat beside me, silent. Perfectly calm, perfectly composed. Letting me fumble, letting me look unstable, like he'd rehearsed this moment. The pattern grew sharper with time. One evening, while making spaghetti, I got distracted by Lucas telling me about his school project. I left the burner on under the saucepan for a few minutes too long. Mark walked in, sniffed the air, and seized the opportunity like a wolf. "Elena, this is dangerous." His voice was sharp, carrying down the hall where Lucas could hear. "Oh, what if he touched the stove? You can't be this careless. No excuses." He cut me off. "This isn't the first time." And Lucas peeked around the corner, his eyes wide, absorbing every word. It wasn't just a scolding, it was testimony. Even my friends noticed the change in me. Rachel, my colleague, pulled me aside after class one day. "Elena, you look exhausted. Are you sure you're okay? You haven't been yourself lately." I wanted to pour it all out. The cameras, the files, the whispers, but fear clamped my throat. What if she didn't believe me? What if she thought I really was paranoid? Worse, what if she told Mark? So I lied. "Just grading stress. I'll be fine." Her eyes lingered on me, searching, but she let it drop. By then, I'd stopped sleeping properly. Every creak in the house felt like a lens focusing. Every flicker of light felt like surveillance. But exhaustion breeds mistakes. One night, I left my keys in the front door after bringing in groceries. When Mark found them, he held them up like a trophy. "Do you even realize how dangerous this is? Anyone could have walked in." Lucas watched, silent and scared, as his father shook his head. "Elena," Mark sighed, "this isn't normal. You're forgetting too much. For his sake, you need help." For his sake. Always for his sake. The final straw came one Saturday morning. I walked into the living room to find Evelyn filming Lucas as he played with his Legos. At first, I thought she was just being doting, recording a sweet memory. But when I glanced at her phone later, I saw the title, Lucas_Playroom_0912. That night, when Mark left his office unlocked, I checked his computer. And there it was, sitting neatly in the same folder, the video of Lucas, with Evelyn's voice in the background, prompting him with questions like, "Do you feel like Mommy forgets things? Not memories, evidence." That's when the rage solidified into something harder than fear. I couldn't just defend myself with words. They'd already branded my words unstable. I needed proof, my own evidence. The very next day, I bought a small voice recorder and slipped it into my bag. Everywhere I went, it came with me. Family dinners, car rides, bedtime routines. At first, it felt desperate, like I was clinging to sanity with gadgets. But soon, it felt like armor. I recorded Evelyn telling Lucas that sometimes mommies go away for a little while. I recorded Mark saying in that calm, patronizing voice that, "Your mother is confused, don't mind her." I recorded the sighs, the staged arguments. the gaslighting woven into daily life. I backed everything up online, password protected. I copied Mark's hidden files onto a drive I hid under the floorboard in Lucas's room. Slowly, painfully, I built my case. But with every step I took forward, they escalated. Mark began pushing therapy harder. Family therapy, he suggested one night, sliding a pamphlet across the table. With Dr. Patterson, Mom swears by him. I picked it up, flipping through the glossy pages. The doctor's credentials gleamed, but something about it made my stomach twist. Evelyn's doctor, Evelyn's choice. A stacked deck, for Lucas' sake, Mark repeated, his voice soft. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I once thought was my partner. His eyes weren't pleading, they were measuring. You mean for your case, I said quietly. He blinked, then smiled thinly. Careful, Elle. Words like that sound paranoid. And that's when I knew they were running out of patience. The walls were closing in. If I didn't act soon, they'd take Lucas from me. And that I could never allow. I used to think survival meant keeping quiet. That if I didn't make waves, if I endured long enough, things would eventually balance themselves out. But the moment I saw my own son's innocence being weaponized against me, I knew survival wasn't silence. Survival was strategy. I wasn't going to outshout Evelyn. I wasn't going to outmanipulate Mark. They'd already set the stage, painted me as the unstable wife, the forgetful mother, the liability. So I decided I wouldn't fight their script. I'd write my own. The turning point came late one night. Mark had fallen asleep in his office chair again, the glow of the computer screen flickering across his face. I crept in, careful not to wake him, and slid a USB drive into the port. I copied everything. Video files, edited clips, transcripts Evelyn had typed up like she was drafting court documents. It took hours. My hands shook every time the hard drive hummed, terrified he'd stir. But he didn't. He never did. He slept like a man too confident in his control to imagine betrayal. When the transfer bar finally reached 100%, I pulled out the drive and tucked it into my bra, my heartbeat hammering against it. That drive was no longer just plastic and circuits. It was leverage. It was survival. But leverage wasn't enough. I needed allies. I thought of Rachel first, my colleague who had asked me if I was okay. I'd brushed her off then, but her concern had been real. Still, telling her everything felt like a gamble. If she didn't believe me, I'd look exactly like the paranoid woman they were painting me as. Instead, I went to someone who had nothing to lose, Aunt June. June was Evelyn's estranged sister, the family's black sheep. She lived 2 towns over in a cluttered little house that smelled like incense and cat hair. She'd never married, never cared about keeping up appearances. When I showed up at her door with Lucas at a sleepover, USB drive clutched in my fist, she raised an eyebrow. Well, if it isn't the Golden family's charity case, to what do I owe the pleasure? I need help, I said simply. She listened without interrupting as I poured it all out. The cameras, the gaslighting, the recordings. When I was finished, her expression was unreadable. Finally, she lit a cigarette, exhaled a cloud of smoke, and said, Evelyn always was a control freak. But this is next level. You believe me? My voice cracked. Of course I do, she said. That woman's been playing puppet master since she was 15. But you're smart, Elena. Smarter than her. You just need to stop playing defense. She helped me catalog the files, labeling them, creating backups on encrypted cloud storage. She taught me how to create duplicates of the USB drive and stash them in different places. Never keep all your ammo in one pocket, she warned. For the first time in months, I felt less alone. But it wasn't just about gathering evidence. It was about timing. Evelyn was moving fast, weaving her web tighter each day. Mark had already mentioned bringing in a lawyer, just to get our affairs in order. I knew what that meant. So I started building my own paper trail. Every morning, I sent myself emails with time-stamped notes about incidents. The burner left on. The journal moved. Evelyn's comments to Lucas. I reported the missing items to the school counselor, framing it as concerns about interference at home. I filed small, innocuous police reports about misplaced belongings, enough to create a breadcrumb trail. To anyone else, it looked tedious. To me, it was insulation. Meanwhile, I leaned into the role they wanted me to play. If Evelyn wanted me to look forgetful, I became forgetful selectively. I forgot to lock my phone, leaving it open on harmless text messages, while the incriminating ones were hidden in a secure app. I misplaced my keys, then made a show of finding them with relief, letting her think her narrative was sticking. Every sigh, every tired smile, every stammered apology, I gave it to them like bait, because while they filmed me, I was filming them. The first big crack came at a Sunday dinner. Evelyn poured herself a glass of wine, then turned to Lucas with that too bright smile. "Sweetheart, tell Mommy what you told me, about how she cried last night." Lucas shifted uncomfortably. His fork clinked against the plate. "I don't want to." "Go on," she urged. "Tell her." He looked at me, torn. "Grandma said you cry because you don't like living with us." My chest tightened, but I forced a sad smile. "Sometimes grown-ups get sad, baby, but that doesn't mean anything's wrong with you, or me." Mark cut in smoothly. "Elena, maybe it's time we talk about professional help." I lowered my gaze, feigning shame. "Maybe you're right." What they didn't know was that my recorder was running in my pocket. Every manipulative word, every subtle push, it was all captured. Over the next weeks, I gathered dozens of such moments. Evelyn telling Lucas, "Sometimes mommies go away, but daddies stay." Mark telling me, "You don't remember things correctly, Elle. Maybe you should write them down." Sophie, my sister-in-law, whispering, "We're just worried for Lucas, you know." Each recording was another nail in their coffin. But the most damning came by accident. One evening, I walked past the den and heard Evelyn on the phone. My recorder was in my pocket, as always. I pressed it on and lingered just out of sight. "Yes," she was saying. "The case will be easy. We have months of footage. She looks unstable, paranoid. Mark will get full custody. We'll make sure she doesn't drag Lucas down with her." My blood ran cold. And then, the judge is an old friend. He knows how these things go. That was it. The proof I needed. Not just suspicion, not just manipulations, cold, calculated conspiracy. I drove to June's that night, tears blurring my vision. I played her the recording, my hands shaking. She leaned back, her face grim. "Well, sweetheart, they just handed you the smoking gun. Now it's about how you use it." I swallowed hard. "What do I do?" "You build your case, and then you blow theirs apart in one strike." So I did. I contacted a lawyer, not one of Evelyn's polished society friends, but a scrappy woman named Carla who built her career on protecting women like me. She listened, stone-faced, as I laid out everything. When I finished, she said, "You have more than enough. The question is, do you want to play quietly, or do you want them destroyed?" I whispered. Carla helped me structure everything. We organized the recordings, the files, the manipulated clips. We drafted affidavits. We prepared witness lists. But she also gave me advice I didn't expect. You can't just win in court. People like Evelyn thrive on social currency, reputation, appearances. If you want this to stick, you need to hit both, the law and the image. It clicked. She was right. If I only fought them legally, they'd spin the story, paint themselves the victims. But if I shattered their public image at the same time, they'd have nowhere to hide. So I planned a two-pronged attack. First, the legal strike. File motions, present the recordings, expose the conspiracy. Second, the public strike. A reveal so big, so undeniable, that even their carefully curated reputations couldn't survive. The more I planned, the calmer I became. Sleep returned in fragments. My appetite crept back. For the first time in months, I felt control, shifting, however slightly, back into my hands. Lucas noticed too. One night, as I tucked him in, he whispered, "Mom, you're not sad anymore." I kissed his forehead. "That's because I remembered something important, baby." "What?" "That I'm stronger than they think." I still played my role in the meantime. I let Evelyn think her poison was working. I let Mark believe his calm gaslighting was breaking me. But inside, I was counting days, counting steps, counting down to the moment I would flip the script and set the stage on fire. The thing about revenge is that it isn't a moment, it's a process. It's the slow, deliberate stitching of a net, so tight that when your enemies finally fall, they realize too late there's no way out. And I had stitched my net carefully, thread by thread, evidence by evidence, until the day came when it was ready to snap shut. It started with the court papers. Carla, my lawyer, filed motions so fast it made Evelyn's head spin. Emergency hearings, requests for custody protections, motions to compel discovery on the surveillance equipment. Within days, Mark and Evelyn were dragged into the spotlight they thought they controlled. I'll never forget the first hearing. The courtroom smelled faintly of wood polish and stale coffee, a strange mix of solemnity and exhaustion. Mark sat 2 rows away, his suit pressed, his expression neutral practiced. Evelyn sat beside him, pearls gleaming, posture perfect, her lips curved in that condescending smile that had haunted me for years. I walked in with Carla at my side, the USB drive tucked in a folder like a loaded weapon. The judge, a woman, in her 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, called the case. Mark's lawyer started with his opening statement, painting me as a deeply troubled woman, struggling with paranoia, forgetfulness, and emotional instability. I sat still, letting the words wash over me. For once, I wasn't scared. I was waiting. Then it was Carla's turn. She stood, calm but lethal, and said, "Your Honor, my client has been subjected to a calculated campaign of gaslighting and manipulation, orchestrated by her husband and his mother. Today we intend to show you proof, not hearsay, not opinion, proof of their conspiracy." The first recording played. Evelyn's voice filled the courtroom. "Yes, the case will be easy. We have months of footage. She looks unstable, paranoid. Mark will get full custody. We'll make sure she doesn't drag Lucas down with her." The sound of my own mother-in-law plotting my erasure rang through the air like a gunshot. Evelyn's face went pale. Mark's jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. The judge's eyebrows shot up. "That was Evelyn Henderson?" "Yes, Your Honor," Carla said smoothly. "My client recorded this on September 14th. The next file showed a video, one of Evelyn coaxing Lucas to say that I cried all the time, cutting my words mid-sentence to make me seem unhinged. Carla paused it at the exact frame where Evelyn smirked into the camera, clearly aware it was running. The room buzzed with whispers. Even the stenographer looked up from her machine. And still, we weren't done. Carla pulled out printed transcripts of my therapy calls, illegally recorded, spliced and stored in that EL backpack folder. She slid them across the judge's bench, recovered from Mr. Henderson's computer, Your Honor. Catalogued and edited without my client's consent. The judge's expression hardened. Mr. Henderson, do you deny this? Mark shifted in his chair. Those files are taken out of context. My wife has been unstable. We were concerned for her mental health. Carla smiled like a shark, concerned or preparing to strip her of her son. The hearing stretched for hours, but by the end, the picture was clear. Evelyn and Mark hadn't just overstepped. They had plotted. They had lied. They had weaponized surveillance and reputation to try to erase me. The judge ordered an immediate injunction. No more cameras, no more recordings, no more contact between Evelyn and Lucas without supervision. And she scheduled a full custody hearing, noting that the evidence presented today raises serious concerns about the father's intentions. For the first time, the ground shifted under their feet. But I wasn't finished. Because Carla was right. Winning in court wasn't enough. Evelyn lived on reputation. She thrived on her status at the country club, her charity luncheons, her carefully polished image as the matriarch of the perfect Henderson family. So I decided to break her where it hurt most. The opportunity came in the form of Evelyn's annual Harvest Gala, a sprawling event where she paraded her wealth and influence under the guise of charity. Politicians came, business partners mingled, cameras flashed. It was her stage, her kingdom, and I was about to burn it down. June helped me prepare. We selected the recordings that cut the deepest, not just the conspiracies, but the moments where Evelyn mocked me, where Mark dismissed me, where they plotted like villains in a bad drama. We compiled them into a tight, undeniable presentation. And then we leaked it. The night of the gala, while Evelyn toasted herself in sequins and pearls, while Mark shook hands and pretended he wasn't a snake, a local journalist received a neatly packaged folder of files labeled The Henderson Family Truth. By the time dessert was served, phones were buzzing, screens lit up, faces turned toward Evelyn, their expressions shifting from admiration to horror. I wasn't in the room, but I heard the details later. How Evelyn's smile froze when someone shoved a phone in her face. How Mark's hand tightened on his wine glass until it shattered. How whispers rippled through the crowd as clips of Evelyn manipulating Lucas played in real time on social media. The Hendersons caught gaslighting their daughter-in-law. Illegal surveillance scandal rocks prominent family. Custody conspiracy exposed. Headlines spread faster than champagne could pour. Meanwhile, I sat at home on the couch with Lucas curled beside me, popcorn in our laps, watching a movie. My phone buzzed endlessly on the coffee table, but I ignored it. For the first time in months, I wasn't the hunted. I was the hunter. The fallout was immediate. Evelyn's charities cut ties within 48 hours. Sponsors pulled funding. The country club regretfully suspended her membership. Friends she'd known for decades ghosted her, unwilling to be associated with scandal. Mark fared no better. His firm, which prided itself on integrity, asked him to step aside while the investigation unfolded. Within a month, he was out. But the true satisfaction came from the silence. For years, Evelyn had filled every room with her opinions, her judgments, her smug superiority. Now, she had nothing to say, not to me, not to anyone. The custody hearing that followed was almost anticlimactic. Carla presented our evidence. Mark tried to bluster, but every word crumbled against the recordings, the transcripts, the headlines. The judge granted me primary custody. Mark was given supervised visitation. Evelyn, none at all. When the gavel came down, I exhaled a breath I felt like I'd been holding for years. Lucas squeezed my hand. Does this mean we're safe, Mum? I smiled through tears. Yes, baby. We're safe now. Walking out of that courthouse, the autumn air sharp and cool, I felt taller somehow. Not because I'd destroyed them, but because I'd saved us. Revenge wasn't just about humiliation. It was about reclamation. Reclaiming my voice, my sanity, my son. The first thing I noticed after the court ruling wasn't relief. It was silence. A silence so deep it felt unnatural, like the world had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. No more Evelyn's constant critiques. No more Mark's calm, patronizing gaslighting. No more whispered doubts poisoning Lucas against me. It was quiet, almost too quiet. But in that silence, I began to hear something else. Myself. The fallout hit Evelyn like a tidal wave. Overnight, her glittering social life collapsed. The gala fiasco was still fresh in everyone's memory, and no amount of spin could salvage her reputation. Her friends, women who once hung on her every word, stopped returning calls. Her charity boards reassessed her positions. By Christmas, the only invitations she had left were from lawyers. She tried to reach out once, leaving a message on my voicemail. Her voice was brittle, stripped of its usual superiority. Elena, we've clearly had misunderstandings. Families shouldn't tear each other apart like this. We should talk. I deleted it without replying. For years I had begged for her to see me, to respect me. Now, she wanted dialogue only because she had nothing left to lose. No, Evelyn, you don't get to rewrite history. Mark's downfall was slower but no less brutal. His firm suspended him indefinitely, and whispers of unethical conduct spread in his professional circles. Clients pulled out. Potential partners vanished. The man who once prided himself on being the calm, competent provider was suddenly unemployed, disgraced, and toxic by association. He tried to fight, of course. He filed motions, appealed rulings, attempted to paint himself as the victim of my vindictive plot. But every attempt only highlighted his desperation. Judges didn't want to hear it. The evidence was too damning, too detailed, too undeniable. The last time I saw him in court, he looked smaller somehow, his suit hanging looser, his eyes sunken. He didn't meet my gaze. Maybe he couldn't. Lucas adjusted faster than I expected. Children are resilient in ways adults underestimate. For the first few weeks, he asked tentative questions. Will I still see Dad? Is Grandma mad at me? But as time passed, his questions shifted. Can we get a dog? Can I invite Jamie over to our house? Can you come to my soccer game, Mom? It struck me then. He wasn't looking back. He was looking forward. Our life became ordinary again, and ordinary felt extraordinary. I picked him up from school without fear of being undermined. We cooked dinner together, pasta sauce splattering as we laughed. He did homework at the kitchen table while I graded essays, the mundane rhythm of normal life stitching us back together. And slowly, I felt the weight lift off me. But the Henderson family name was never quite free of its shadow. Extended relatives tried to straddle the line, calling me with awkward half-apologies. We didn't know what Evelyn was doing, they claimed. Some wanted to save face, others genuinely wanted reconciliation. I kept my distance. I'd learned that forgiveness without accountability was just permission for more pain. Aunt June remained my steadfast ally. She came over often, bringing groceries, fussing over Lucas, reminding me with her rough humor that family could mean more than blood. One evening, as we sat on my porch sipping tea, she said, "You realize you've done what no one else dared. You stood up to Evelyn, and won." I laughed, shaking my head. It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like surviving. Ju's eyes softened. Sometimes surviving is the biggest win there is. Mark's supervised visits with Lucas were awkward. He tried to play the doting father, bringing gifts and forcing smiles. But children see through facades. Lucas was polite, but distant. His laughter strained. After one such visit, he climbed into my car, clutching a toy robot Mark had given him. "Do I have to keep seeing him?" he asked quietly. I hesitated. For now, yes, but only in safe places, with people there to make sure everything is okay. Lucas nodded, then looked out the window. "I don't think he knows me, Mom. Not really." The words stung, but they were true. Mark had been so focused on building a case, on proving me wrong, that he'd forgotten to actually know his son. Meanwhile, Evelyn retreated from public life. The last I heard, she'd sold her membership at the club and moved into a smaller property. Rumors swirled about her health, her finances, her bitterness. Some whispered she was plotting a comeback. Others said she'd been broken permanently. I didn't care. She could live in silence for the rest of her life, and it still wouldn't balance the years she tried to erase me. But here's the thing about revenge. Once the dust settles, you're left with the question of what comes next. For months I'd lived on adrenaline, planning every step, every move, every reveal. When it was over, the quiet felt strange. I didn't know how to exist without the constant hum of survival mode. It took time, therapy, long walks, journaling without fear that someone would read my words and twist them against me. Slowly, I learned how to be Alina again. Not the paranoid wife, not the silenced mother, but me. And as for Lucas, he blossomed. His grades improved. He laughed more. He asked questions about the stars, about animals, about the world. The shadows Evelyn and Mark had cast over him began to fade. One night, as I tucked him in, he looked at me and said, "Mom, I like it better when it's just us." Tears filled my eyes, but I smiled. "Me too, baby. Me too." The Hendersons thought they'd erased me. Instead, they erased themselves. Their lies unraveled, their reputations shattered, their power stripped, and I walked away not just with my son, but with my voice. Because in the end, that was the sweetest part of all. Looking back now, it's almost surreal. To think I once sat at that dining table, swallowing Evelyn's barbed comments, convincing myself that silence was strength. To think I once lay awake at night staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was really losing my mind. But I wasn't losing my mind. I was losing myself, and I fought like hell to get her back. The revenge wasn't in the courtroom victory, though that was satisfying. It wasn't in watching Evelyn's social empire crumble, though I won't pretend that didn't feel good. And it wasn't even in Mark's downfall, though part of me savored the justice of it. The real revenge was in what came after. It was in the mornings when Lucas bounded into the kitchen, his laughter filling the air. No longer cautious, no longer shattered by doubt. It was in the quiet evenings when I could sip tea on the porch, knowing no one was recording me. No one was cataloging my private thoughts like evidence. It was in the simple freedom of being able to breathe without waiting for the other shoe to drop. Revenge, I realized, isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about reclamation. I reclaimed my voice after years of being silenced. I reclaimed my sanity after months of being told I was unstable. Most importantly, I reclaimed my son's trust, his innocence, his right to grow up without manipulation, twisting his reality. Do I still feel anger? Yes. There are moments when the memory of Evelyn's smirk or Mark's calm condescension makes my chest tighten. But anger doesn't own me anymore. It flickers, then fades, because the truth is, They don't matter anymore. What matters is that Lucas sees a mother who fought for him, another who refused to let lies define her, a mother who, even when she was afraid, found a way to be brave. That's the legacy I want to leave him, not just survival, but strength. If you've ever been in a place where people tried to erase you, tried to silence you that your reality wasn't real, know this, you are not alone. They can take your comfort. They can take your peace for a while, but they cannot take your truth unless you give it to them. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't their downfall at all. It's your rise. I rose, and I'll never let anyone push me back down again. So what do you think? Was I right to expose them in court and destroy Evelyn's reputation? Or do you think I should have walked away quietly and just protected Lucas? For me, walking away quietly was never an option. Silence is what almost broke me. Speaking up is what saved us. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been gaslit, manipulated, or made to feel invisible by someone who should have had your back? Did you ever get your revenge or your freedom? Share your story in the comments. You never know who might need to read it. And if this story resonated with you, if you felt that rush when the truth finally came out, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and join this community. This is where we take pain and turn it into power, where we share stories that prove justice, in one form or another, is possible. Because sometimes revenge isn't about making them pay, it's about showing them you'll never be erased. And that's exactly what I did.